This is a tactic that all the pro players would be using if they never banned it in FC25. People think this tactic is not good because no pros use it, but actually they would use it, but they're just not allowed to. They've been banned from using 5-backs. We're going to go through different variations. I got 5 different variations of the 5-3-2, a defensive one, a balanced one, attacking one, ultra attacking one. Remember, if you really want to improve your performance in a weekend league and you really want to get those more wins, yes, your gameplay is the most important thing, but it's important to have a system which is based for each aspect of the game. So, for example, on this system here, we got the defensive one. So this is basically actually quite defensive. The reason why I've gone with the 5-3-2 is I wanted to release the 5-2-1-2, but I think most people can't defend without a CDM. This player here is going to be your Hail Mary, your savior and grace. This is going to be the player that's going to help you defensively. Now, I'll give you some experimentation as well, but with this system, we have the counter is the most important thing. Without counter, just stand there and a static. If you want these fullbacks to run up and forward, up and down, like I always call them FIFA 19, the flying fullbacks, you need to make sure they're on counter. You want to get better at FC25 now. Before you skip ahead, what if I told you if you don't get better after 1 month, I'll refund your money? That's a nil guys guarantee. We got in-depth tutorials that are not even on the YouTube channel. We show you the theory of something and we show you gameplay examples in a structured format. We also go over real-life football examples that apply to the game and exclusive pro gameplay analysis, full gameplay analysis to elevate your game. We teach you everything from the basics to the meta. Come join at patreon.com/nilguys. Links down below in the description. If you don't get better after 1 month, we'll refund your money. That's the nil guys guarantee. Links down below in the description. Now, the depth. This is where things get interesting. I think with depth, you can afford to be a bit high. You don't have to go down to the 31s. You're already defending in a back 5. The only weakness you're going to have is when you lose the ball and you could get potentially closed out or you might get doubled up on the wing areas. That's the only weakness with this formation, if you're asking me personally speaking. But that's why I left the fullbacks on balance. So if you want to even start the game with this formation, you could. It's a very conservative formation, but the benefit is that the left back and right back are on balance, so they're still going to go forward, but you can always trigger them manually when you want to. And that's the reason why counter is so important. I think this is a very good formation as it is. I think 99% of you, if you use this formation, you're going to love this. This is the one to start the game. And if you really want to try the formation, I probably would recommend this one because the left back and right backs, they're still going to go forward. They're not on fullback defend, but they're going to be a bit more conservative. You got the 2 center mids on holding, a defensive stability, and also you have the CDM as well. So that will be the defensive tactic. That's the code. So the code is 1 Zulu, a percentage sign, 5 capital Quebec, capital Kilo, capital Juliet, 7 @ Yankee, capital Victor. So that would be the defensive one. So when we go over to the balance system, so you can see quite similar to what we had yesterday, we just very incrementally increased the depth here to 60. We still left it on counter, still being very, very important here. And you can see it's basically similar. The only thing we've done is we put one of the center mids to box to box. In fact, I talked about how box to box and how well it works. I never really used 2 box to box center mids up until I tried Stokes' 4-4-1-1 tactic. Well, at least I only used it for a little bit of time, like a small segment of game. But when I used that tactic for about 4 or 5 games, I realized that 2 box-to-boxes actually work very well if you know how to attack. The problem is, of course, Stokes is a top-tier pro player, and that's why most people, or the masses, should I say, are copying that tactic, but are losing because you have to be a high-level player. So I wanted to add the element of balance in. So we got 1 player on holding, 1 on box-to-box. We got both the left-back and right-back on wing-back. So with wing-back, they're just a bit more, I would say a bit more attack-minded is what I'll probably put it down to, as opposed to a fullback balanced. Their actual intentions are to go forward with the ball or at least go into space. I like to see them as left mids and right mids when you're attacking. So it can be a very good option. And that is why I think it's worth putting one of these center mids on box to box because you've kind of got one player coming inside the box. And of course, feel free to change this to Playmake if you really want to have an extra presence going forward. If you want that kind of like virtual cam, as I like to call it. But I think it's very, very good. I've gone with 2 advanced forwards for these because I like my 2 strikers to stay in position with this specific tactic. But this would be more of a balanced formation. This would be the one to start the game with, you could argue, or even close the game out with this one. And this would be one that's just a bit more attack heavy. You see how we're incrementally making it a bit more attacking, increasing the depth ever so slightly, and also increasing the roles of some players to make them more attacking. Then we're going to go, so the code for that, sorry, is for the balance one is 4 Zulu, capital Romeo, Charlie, capital Papa, capital November, capital Quebec, question mark, capital Charlie, 2 capital Yankee. Then we're going to go over to the attacking variation. So the small differences we made is the depth we've moved now to 70. So I wanted to make sure we kept 2 unbalanced, and then we go to high for attacking. This would be the attacking tactic. Now the only thing that we've really changed here is that we changed the structure. So we kept the wing back on the left back, and we added one the center mids to playmaker. You could even keep that on box to box. To be honest, I think maybe for most of you guys actually looking back now, box to boxes, at least they do a bit of both, but ideally here get a roll plus is the most important thing. And then we put the CDM to wide half defend. This is what I was talking about yesterday. Remember I was saying that if you have, for example, players in attacking fullback, if you lose the ball, and you can see this inside the game, you'll see your CDM, they will go and they will cover for the right back. So ideally you'd want someone here who's got a roll plus wide half defend. Who has that? I don't even actually know, to be honest. But ideally try to get as much, if you watch this later on the year, try to get as much pluses as you can in this system. But that's what I would say. So at least you got if the right back does go forward and overcommits, becomes like a right wing almost, you kind of play in that 4-4-2. Think of it like a 4-4-2 actually. A 4-4-2, except for sometimes that attacker wing back adds more presence. So that is one of the key things. If you want to, you could always, even if you want to, you can always, for example, consider, and I would say be very, very careful with putting a ball player center back on build up to make it a bit more like a real life tactic, you could argue. But I'd probably stay away from that. Keep them more defender, not out of position. And if you really, really want to, you can also just return the CDM to holding if you really want to as well, if you want a bit more stability. But this could be a good option. I'm going to leave this option here as the wide half. You can always tinker with that yourself. But I think the benefit of this one is that you have one fullback that's a bit more attacking. You're more attack heavy down the right-hand side, but at least you got a player covering. If you, however, feel comfortable, I would strongly advise you leaving this player in the middle. The reason I have to be very careful is because don't forget, when I release these tactics, someone could be watching this who's a rank 1 player, and I'm pretty sure they'll be fine with any tactic that I give them. Someone that may be a rank 5 player, I have to be very careful and be mindful, because a rank 5 player who doesn't know how to defend in the first place, let's be honest, they're rank 5 because they don't know how to defend. Attacking is much easier now. Defending is where people are struggling. That's the biggest skill gap now, you could argue, is defending. And people are getting destroyed defensively because they don't know when to switch players and when to run back, even though I talk about it a million times. Check out my defending videos, you're still unsure about that. But that's what I'm trying to say. That right back could be a good covering player, but you will know yourself if you don't need that player. But that is the code over there. We're going to put the code. So that will be the attacking variation. We got capital Echo and Delta Oscar Bravo 5 Delta capital Kilo percentage capital Hotel and Oscar, and that is the code for the attacking tactic. Then we're going to go over to very attacking. Now there's something I want to mention to you. I would probably advise you to change to a 4-4-2. Okay, so what I would probably say is your best bet is to probably, we'll go over that in a second. I'll explain to you why that's so important. But this would be the very attacking tactic. So we can see we've still kept it on 70. We've not gone to 95. You can adjust it as you want to if you want to be very aggressive. Pull back the potion advance forward, 2 box-to-box centre mids, and then both of them on the attack and wing back balance. So you've got no coverage here with your CDM as the half winger, or so half CDM as I like to call it, even though it's not by to say half CDM that covers into that position. You don't have that. But the benefit of this is that you have the left mid and right mid, you've got the 3 centre mids, and it's basically like you could argue is a 3-5-2. Think of it like a 3-5-2 without the cam. So that's why we've got 2 box-to-box players here. If it was 2 CDMs, then I would say that's fine to have like a cam on stay forward or like a shadow striker, for example. But you can't do that, unfortunately. So what I would say over here with this CDM being here, this CDM will sit, and you got 2 players that will both go inside the box and equally come back and defend. So that is the most important thing with this system. So that will be the code. We're going to go over to 4-4-2 in a second. So that will be the code. So that is the very attacking one. That's exclamation mark and sign, capital X-ray, capital Charlie, capital Victor, capital Sierra, Mike, capital Echo, hashtag, capital Alpha, India. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is, look, this is not a very good pressing formation, because you see when your opponent has the ball, let's say you settle into your shape. So let's say when I mean settle in the shape, I mean like you've had the ball for about 10 seconds. That is when normally, let's say your fullbacks are going forward, they normally return back into their settle shape. That's what I call them. When they settle back into their shape, that's what I mean. When your opponent has the ball, it's very hard to press the ball, especially if they distribute the ball from side to side. Because you've got no wingers, it's very, very hard. You will know this. If you play like a 4-1-2-1-2, you will know it's very hard to press because you haven't got a wide width. And even the left back and right backs, don't forget, they only go forward when you have the ball in your possession as an attacking tactic. So from a defensive standpoint, to press the ball, it's not very effective. Now, I would say none. Maybe you could argue the 5-2-3 might be the only viable option. So if you wanted to go to a pressing state, I would recommend a 5-2-3. Because at least this way, okay, you might not have two strikers, but you could argue instead of two strikers, one of them goes into centre back. It's basically a 4-4-2. But instead of normally having two strikers, you've only got one striker, and one of them is going back to make it back five. So at least that way you got a left wing and a right wing. So I think the right way and the correct way of doing this would be to use a wider formation like this. However, personally speaking, three backs are terrible because out of possession, unfortunately, the left mids and right mids, they don't come back no matter what you do. So this would be arguably the best formation inside the game. But they've nerfed the left mids and right mids. They don't come back to left back and right back position when you defend. They just stay forward. So that's why all the three backs are basically redundant. So EA, if you're watching this, you need to fix that because all the three backs currently, as they speak, are redundant. And unless you're using this in Division 10 to 5, it's honestly no point using it. Even if you're high level playing, you play against a novice, they can easily destroy you with a 4-2-1-3. So that's something you got to bear in mind, and that is why I'd recommend even a 5-4-1. As I said, it's kind of okay, but I'll probably say the 5-2-3. The wingers are a bit more prominent now. What I would recommend is changing to a different system. Now, if you have the ability like I have to play multiple players, so you can see Kadioglu here can play as a left wing, okay, and you can see if you have the unique player, so you can see I have Kunde that could also do the same, okay, and then Tonali is the player that can't play centre mid, but Tonali can play. But Tonali can't play centre mid. But he can play centre mid and CDM. So you need to find that versatile player that can play Cam and that can play centre mid. There's not that many. I think Buffon is a good option. Lampard. Otherwise, what I'd recommend is if you want to switch to a 4-2-3-1. Let's say you wanted to go to a pressing state, then what I'd recommend is going to a 4-4-2, and let's assume in this example you're losing, okay? So normally when you go to a 4-4-2 flat, let's say you're losing inside the game, you can see here it's a bit problematic because you still got left wings and right wings, but I can't really do a bit of anything else. So one tactic that you can do is if you employ, instead of going to a 4-4-2, find out what works for your team. So I would say, for example, I can go to a 4-2-4, like so. So you can see Kadioglu can play left wing, and you can see these guys can play in the middle. And then you can see Kunde can't play right wing. So you can see at least I've got a complete system like this. And then what I could always do is I could always sub off Kadioglu. Let's say worst case scenario, you had to press with this system. I'd probably recommend something like this and putting the player out of position as a striker. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Maybe I would do something like this. I have to be completely precise. Something like this. Is this an ideal option? No, but sometimes beggars can't be choosers. You have no choice. Now, what I would recommend, of course, is subbing this player off. But bear in mind, if you sub this player off, let's say, for example, you're losing 2-0, then you change to this 4-4-2 formation, and then you sub this player off, then think about it. If you then change to another tactic, then you're going to have, for example, a player that can't play in position. Do you see that? So you got to take into account. So if Archie Gray, if I put, I don't know, let's say I put a striker there, Archie Gray is now going to be playing as CDM. So unless that player can play striker and CDM, which is only a few players in the game, it can be a bit problematic. So that's the things you got to bear in mind. Now, so you can probably sub off, put an attacker on, and maybe change another formation, like a 4-2-1-3. Now, what I'd recommend is these two players, especially if they're box to box, they need to be plus, okay? Box to box plus. The left back and right back, you need them ideally to be wing back plus or whatever. Now, I know it's not feasible for every single system, but if you can, try to get at least a wing back pluses. An attacker wing back plus, they don't come back and defend, that's fine. You can cover for it on one side because you got one player on holding. So I would say at the very most, there's been so many fullback evos, but if you haven't, try to get the plus on the left back and right back. Although I've created a 5-system formation, I would probably say most people will like system like this, and then you would convert into a 4-2-1-3. So this could be a tactical slot to use alongside normal formation. But the truth is, only you will know that for the players that you do have. Not everyone has the same players, not everyone has the same evolutions. But just to keep things a bit more concise and consistent, I've done it in this tactical layout where it's all the same formation. But that will be the 5-3-2. I would highly recommend adding this into your slot. I think a lot of you guys would like it. If you've got a formation like a 4-2-1-3, you'll actually be genuinely surprised, because if you just get the right players, so let's say for example, let's say we move Van der Ven here, and let's just say we swap Van der Ven with Kunde. If you could somehow fit into a 4-2-1-3, and I know there's that new EVA that came out that allows you to play centre back as a left winger. I'm not saying it's ideal, but then you could have a shape like this if you've got a versatile player that can do a bit of everything. Now these EVOs can do a bit of everything. That's just something just to bear in mind. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you want to get better FC, you can join my Patreon. It's patreon.com/guides. We've actually got a video on the meta right now, the attacking meta right now, that all the pro players are using to score goals. Make sure you check that out. Thanks for watching. Take it easy, and of course, I'll catch you next time. Peace out. Links down below.